friends. So today we're going to paint a sunflower. So what we're going to need for our sunflower is some sort of watercolor paper, a bowl with some water, watercolors, a paintbrush, a pencil to draw our sunflower first, and an eraser in case we make mistakes, a plate of some sort that you can clean off easy. Just a regular dinner plate works best for watercolor, I find. Some paper towel or a cloth or a towel that you can wash later to rinse our watercolor in between and dry our brush. And you're going to want something round today, so you could use anything that's round that will be about that size or a little smaller on your page. You could use the inside of a tape like I am, or you could use the rim of a cup. Maybe ask a parent to help you find something that would be round that would work for the inside of our sunflower. And then optionally, if you want to tape down your paper after you've traced it out while we're watercolor painting, that just helps the paper not to curl. So that's optional, but I recommend doing it with some masking tape or painter's tape. All right, so to get started, we are going to trace out our sunflower. So we're going to find about middle of the page, so about center. Try your best, it doesn't have to be perfect. And we're just going to trace that round object so that we get the inside of our sunflower. And then, after you've done that, we're gonna go around and we're gonna do our first layer of petals. So all around your sunflower, you're just going to do petals. So take your time with it. You don't have to draw it as dark as I am. I'm just pushing really hard on the paper with the pencil because I wanted to show up so you guys can see on the camera, but you can do this really light, just enough that you can see where your petals are. That will make it easier to erase if you want to fix something later. So just going all around our circle with our petals. You can see how I'm turning the paper as I go, and that just makes it easier, I find, to get it all the way around. And you see how my petals didn't line up exactly? That's fine. I am just going to do a quick little fix. So that's why I recommend drawing light. It'll just make it easier if you have to make any of these fixes. There we go. Ta-da! So that is our first layer of petals. So we are going to do another layer of petals behind, because sunflowers often have lots of these beautiful yellow petals that really are like a lion's mane around the inside. They're so pretty. So when you're ready, you can pause this video if you're not there yet, if you're still drawing your first layer of petals. But if you're ready, we're gonna start. And behind the sunflower petals that connect, we're gonna add another petal behind there. So we're just gonna go around and you're just gonna add petals in the back all the way around. Once again, I'm twisting the paper so that it's easier to draw the petals, so I don't have to try to twist my wrist around all the way around. Oops. My cat, Gus. My cat is pushing on our water fountain. If you heard that, that was him pouring water, trying to get my attention. Ignore that. He has been quite the little silly goose lately. All right. And there we have it. So you should have something that looks like this. So you'll have a layer of those front petals, and then you'll have back petals going all the way around your sunflower. And if you want to, you could add a stem going down. I will do that. So somewhere at the bottom, we can just add our sunflower stem, just like that. So now we can start painting. So I'll give you a second to catch up while I tape down my sunflower, because now I want to tape it because I don't want it to move while I'm painting. Okay, so now that that is all taped down, whenever we put paint on, it just stops your paper from curling. So for our sunflower, we are going to start with a bright yellow. So if you have the same paint palette as me, we're going to use this top yellow. It is 1, 2, 3 over from the far side. So we're going to grab lots of that yellow, and we're going to take our plate. We're going to dip our brush in water, load up, get it really, really saturated, really scrub with that water to activate the paint, and we're going to add it to our palette, which is our plate. So just try to add quite a lot of that yellow. Can always add more later, but it's good to have a good start because we're going to mix a few colors here. If you have the same palette as me anyway, I highly recommend mixing in the colors because it just creates a more detailed look, a little more realistic, and adds a little depth to the color. But if you don't have the exact palette that I do, don't worry about it. You can add a little brown if you have brown. It's just going to take a little experimenting to get kind of like a similar color, but I'll guide you through it when it's time. All right, so I have lots of that yellow. I'm going to add water, get it all watery because it's watercolor and we want it to really spread. And then on our palette, we're going to take some of this far gold color. So it's at the top and it's the very corner. So very corner gold. We're just going to load our brush up with some of that gold. Scrub, 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 activate it. Then we're just going to add it to our yellow. Just a little bit, just a little. We don't want it to be too dark because we're going to make a darker color later. We're just trying to make this yellow a little less bright and a little more true to what a sunflower would be. So I'll add a little more water, get it nice and watery now. And then we're going to go in and color our petals. So we are only going to do the front petals that we drew first, okay? So I want you to start to add your watercolor to every front petal. So not the back ones, not these gaps in between at the front, if you can see, just those front ones. So you see how I left the gap, the little triangle kind of at the bottom? We're not going to color that in yet because that actually is the back petal shining through. So that's going to be a little darker later. So take your time and just go around your sunflower and color those petals in this vibrant, lighter yellow. And if you need more water, if your paint isn't spreading very well, just dip your brush in that water and add a little more to your paint. And get that sort of consistency that we're looking for, which is watercolor should spread like water. So it shouldn't be too dry. You shouldn't get like, I don't know if you can see very well because I know that this is a light yellow. See how that's not really spreading very well. It's not getting very saturated. That's not what we want. We want a nice wet color that's going to spread really easily with our brush. So if you need to dip in with water every once in a while to reactivate that paint and keep it wet on your palette, you should do that. Keep in mind that the more water we add to our paint though, the less color it will be. So the less pigmented it will be, sorry. So that means if we add a bunch of water to the paint on our palette, you might notice if you have too much water that it's going to start to turn a lighter yellow. So if that happens to you, just add more of the colors that we used onto your palette and it will bring the pigment back. Oops. And you can see maybe that I just dragged my finger onto the paper and I put some yellow onto the white. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. We've gone over this in previous videos, but if you haven't seen those videos, this is a good tip. Take a little bit of tissue paper or Kleenex, wet your brush with clean water, scrub a little over that color that you want to take away, and then push down with that paper towel, and it should remove most of the color. Sometimes it leaves a little behind, but usually it does a pretty good job of picking up the pigment. So I am going to do that a few times just to kind of fix it there. And there we go, much better. Not perfect, but that's part of watercolor. These little mistakes happen and they make every painting unique. So while I was doing that, my paint started to dry, so I'm adding more water. And I'm gonna keep going. Where I did this little touch up, I can come back as long as my paper isn't wet. If it's still wet where we scrubbed it off, it can bleed in. See how that's bleeding in? So I'm actually going to wait to fix that till later. You want it to be dry before we add more color there to fix the white spot that we took away. Because if you try to put paint on wet, and if the wet part was outside of the line, and you add paint, watercolor spreads, it blooms. So it will go onto your paper where you don't want it to, wherever it's wet. So let it dry first. And if you're doing what I'm doing, which is putting my arm across the paper, make sure to check it's dry so you don't make the mistake I did. If it's dry, it won't smudge. And if it's not dry, you can wait a minute, or you can just be really careful and not put your hand down. And if you get some paint onto the back petals, like that by mistake, don't even worry about it because we're going over them later with a darker yellow. So that will get covered up. And if some of the paint slips into the circle like that, you can just take a tissue and try to wipe it up like we did before. Or you can just leave it because we're going to actually make the center black. So it's not a big deal. It will get covered. So don't stress if that happens, okay? Then I'm just going to go back and add more color onto those petals because I want them to be a little darker yellow. So when watercolor dries, it always dries lighter than it first appeared. So if you want that really, really beautiful pigmented yellow, you can go back over each petal with a quick wash of color just to brighten them up and make them even more pigmented. And see how this petal had dried now outside, so it's not going to bleed anymore onto the white. So it's safe to color over this one again. If it was still wet where I fixed it, then the paint might go everywhere again, and then we wouldn't have a white background there. So just make sure that anywhere that you've done a touch-up, it's dry before you put any paint back on, so you don't run into that problem. And I'm noticing I'm running out of paint a little bit, so I am going to grab more of my yellow that we used before, and then a touch more of that gold, just to make sure I have enough. And I'm gonna add lots of water. And I'm gonna keep painting. Sometimes we run out and we have to refill, or we notice that we've added so much water our color starts to be light. So we want it to be that nice, vibrant yellow. Remember to watch, make sure that the other side of your painting is dry if you're gonna drop your arm onto the paper. Mine isn't because I'm working really fast. So I'm trying to hold my hand in the circle where there isn't any paint so I don't smudge it. But you could also just take your time and let it dry before you do the other side, okay? And there we go. So I am going to let that dry for a second, rinse my brush. You guys catch up if you're not there yet, and then we will continue with the back petals in just a moment. Okay, so now we can go ahead and do the back petals. So using that same yellow that we did for the front petals, we can add more of that yellow. So really go in there and scrub, scrub, scrub again. Get that yellow, but this time we are going to add way more gold. So if you don't have gold, if you don't have the same palette, you can add brown. You might not need as much brown as the gold that we're using because brown will really be darker than this gold. So just judge it by your own opinion, what you like. You're just trying to get this gold color. So everyone's might look a little different because we each are mixing our own colors, and that's totally fine because sunflowers come in all sorts of colors. So I'm picking up a lot of that gold and I'm adding a bunch of it because I want the back flowers to be darker to show that there's a front and a back. So the back petals kind of have a shadow on them, so they're a bit darker. So we're adding lots and lots of that gold. And if you're not sure if that is dark enough, you can grab a paper and you could swatch it on a different paper and then compare it to your first petals to see if you think it's dark enough. So I'm pretty happy with that color. So now I'm just going in and I'm mixing it up with a lot of water. Adding a bunch of water, make it nice and flowy. And there we go. So now, taking my time, I'm going to start to color in the back petals. And you can see how that's just a shade darker than the front petals. And then down here, where we left those triangles, those are going to be that dark golden color as well, okay? So take your time and go around and do the back petals. Color them all in with that dark golden color and take your time. It's not going to be perfect. And you see how I'm holding my brush, the very tip, I'm touching it where the petal meets the front petals, because if I just smush it and push hard, my color is going to go onto the other petals, kind of like it did over here, which is totally fine. We'll blend that out later, but if you can prevent that by just touching the paper so gentle with the tip of your brush, you'll have more precision, which will allow you to not have to clean it up as much later. So I'm actually going to clean up that first one. So what I did was I rinsed my brush, and then I'm going in with a little fresh water. There's no paint on my brush now, just water. And I'm just using the paint that was there and some water to kind of blend that out because I was finding it a bit harsh. And see how that kind of blended away that harsh blob? So now I'm going to carry on. So using the tip of my brush, I'm doing that corner area. Same with down here, the tip of my brush, corner. Okay. Now, I'm just gonna go all around my sunflower like this, like that. And then we might add some brown in just for some definition, okay? But let's start with this and we will go from there. So just take your time. And remember to use the tip of your brush. It will help you get way more precision with this back piece. I also never do back and forth. So I don't do this with my brush. I only ever go one way. So how that looks on my paper is forward, stop, forward, stop, forward, stop, forward, stop, forward, 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 forward. So just going one direction always, forward, forward, forward. Because if you start to go back and forth, you lose a lot of control with your brush and you're not able to be as precise. So just go one direction whenever you're filling in your petals. So forward, little strokes for the little areas. And I went over the line there a little more than I would like, so I'm just taking a paper towel and soaking up that paint before it dries. There we go. Okay, so there is the first layer, and I am going to add a ton of water now. So this part's optional, you don't have to do it, but I think it just makes the sunflower look even more realistic. So we're adding so much water because we want to lighten this a lot. We don't want it to be that really dark pigment. We want it to have lots of water, which is going to make it a lighter shade of the same color. So lots and lots of water. And then we're going to gently do that with our brush. So what I'm doing is I'm just flicking upward to kind of show that the petals have some crinkles in them. They have texture. So just do some big lines, and it does not have to be precise at all. I'm doing it really fast. You want it to be very watery. If it's too pigmented, like, let's say, I'm cleaning my brush right now. Say that it was too pigmented. I'm going to show you an example of that. So I'm just taking some direct paint. Don't do this. I'm just giving you an example. Say that happened. It was too dark. We don't like it. We wanted it to be more blendy. Go in with a clean brush with a lot of water on it and quickly blend it out. And if you do that fast enough, you should be able to blend that color so that it gets lighter. You can go as close to the stem as you want, or you can go as long as you want. This is your sunflower, so you make it look the way that you think looks the coolest. Okay. And you can see for yourself if you think that that's enough color, or if you want to add some more strokes on top of that, you can as well. Remember, watercolor always dries a little bit lighter than whenever it's wet. So go around and just plop in some more color if you want. Blend it if you think it's too close or too dark. You can add some water. It's totally up to you. We just want to break up those petals to show that they have dimension and they're not just flat one color petals, okay? They have tones in them. So now I am going to take brown. So in our palette, we have some browns at the very, very bottom of our palette. If you have the same one as me, it is the second one over on the last line of the watercolor. So you're gonna get that nice and worked up, and if you just have another palette, just use any brown. And we're going to add that into our color. We don't wanna add too much because we want it to still be a goldeny yellow color. If it looks too dark, you can add a little bit of yellow back in. Either yellow will work, but I'm adding in a little bit of that light yellow, and I'm adding even more water. And then we're gonna go back and carefully darken. Oh, we're actually gonna wait until it dries a bit more. It's a little bit too wet to work with right now. So maybe take this time to let your petals dry, because if we paint wet watercolor over wet petals, the watercolor paint is just going to bloom everywhere, and our whole sunflower, where it's wet, will turn like brown. So we don't want that. So we're gonna let it dry. So you could get up and stretch, you could have a snack, take a bathroom break, do something for about 10 minutes, let this watercolor sunflower dry, and we will continue. See you back in about 10 minutes. Okay. Now our petals are nice and dry. We're going to go back in with that darker yellow, the one that we added brown to. Make sure it's nice and mixed up. Lots of water. I also got fresh water, so if you feel like your water is getting a little yucky, you can go ahead and get fresh water. Just pause the video and go get some, and then come back and I'll be here when you're waiting. Or when you're ready, sorry. Okay, so mix, 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 lots of water. We want that dark, dark golden brown. And then we can just go in between, and we're just darkening that back petal, but we're doing the same thing. So the same thing, so you wanna fill that triangle at the bottom in all the way, but we're flicking up and adding some dimension to the petals, like we did with the front ones, or you could just completely cover them and make them dark. It is totally up to you. And if you think it looks too limey, you can go in with a clean paintbrush with some water on it, a damp brush, and just blend that out. Just blend it out. Totally up to you though, how you like it to look. So, doing some lines in the back. The most important thing here is filling in these inner triangles, because that's where a big shadow is on our leaf. Okay. And I'm just flicking my brush up getting some dimension in those petals. And then we can go back in and fade that out if we don't like it. If you think it looks too liney, we will fix it with some water in a bit. But first, just go around and let it soak in a little bit to the paper. So lines all the way around. Don't worry about blending these out yet. We will blend them out whenever we are done adding them. Okay, so now I'm cleaning my brush, getting all that paint off. I'm gonna make it damp. We don't want it soaking wet, so try to kind of wipe off some of the water. And then just on the top part of that back petal, you can go around and kind of just go over where we added those dark browns and just kind of blend them, just a little gently blend them. Just go over them, and blending them just means take your wet brush and just kind of drag it around them. Pull that paint up a little. If you think you need more, you can add more. There we go. And this is really up to you, how dark you want this to be. Maybe you want it to be really light, so you don't want it to be so dark. You could blend that out with more water. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now we are going to go in with black. So the colors for the middle of our sunflower are going to be black, light brown, and black, okay? So black, brown, light brown, and then black again, sorry. So on our palette, we're going to grab black. It's the third row down and it's the first one of its row. So get lots of black on your brush. You can put it on our palette. Get quite a lot on there. There we go, and then we're gonna add some water. Make it nice and flowy. We don't want it to be too light. We want it to be pretty black, so make sure you have quite a lot of black paint on your brush. And then we're going to dot. See how I'm dotting my brush? I want you to do that all the way around. And you see how I'm going a little over the circle? I'm not just making it, I'm not tracing that circle like a perfect circle. Because sunflowers have seeds, and those seeds are shapes of they're like oval and kind of roundish. So we want to show that a sunflower is not perfectly round in the middle. It has these seeds. So paint the outside of your sunflower, but don't focus on making it perfect. The imperfection of your little strokes, your dots, are going to make it look even more realistic because it's going to give that effect of seeds, okay? So just take your time, and we're going all the way around. And we're using just the tip of our brush, okay? You don't want to push too hard because then you lose control and you don't get as much definition. We don't want it to be super blobby, just a little bit textured, okay? Or maybe you want your sunflower to have really big seeds, and if you want really big seeds, you can push harder. That's totally up to you, okay? There we go. So once you've gone all the way around, we're gonna keep doing that. We're gonna draw a circle in the middle on the outside. And you're going to fill that in by daubing black, okay? Leave some room to add brown, okay? But this is just your guide, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you leave some white in between the black, that's actually good. So if you can't cover it all with black, no worries, because that actually gives the illusion of some seed color. Because I don't know if you've ever seen a sunflower seed up close, but they actually have a little bit of white on them. So they're black and they have like these white markings on them. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that. And I know that I didn't do the circle very good, but that's gonna get covered with brown, so don't worry about that. So next step, we are going into our palette and we are going to actually go for the third brown from the bottom. So this is a lighter brown. If you don't have a lighter brown, do not stress, just use whatever you have available, okay? So we're going to add that to our palette. I want you to grab a lot of that, okay? A lot. Oop, that was the wrong color. So that third brown, a lot. It's kind of this reddish brown. But we're not only using that color, we're going to mix in our dark brown too. So the second from the bottom, okay? The one that we used before in our sunflower petals, I'm gonna add a lot of that now to get this nice browny color. So lots of water, lots of scrubbing. Get that color on your brush and then put it down on the palette. And then we're gonna add water. So once again, we don't want it to be super light, okay? So just enough water to make it flowy. Perfect. And then we're gonna start our next layer. So we're gonna dot, and you can go over some of the black so that they blend together, okay? They do not have to be separate. So they can definitely touch a little, okay? So you can go over the black with the brown. And what we're gonna do with this is we're gonna go all the way. You can kind of scrub that in the middle because that's gonna get covered. So we're doing brown around, that dark brown, all around, dot. Dot. Take your time. You might have to let it dry a little before we add more brown, just so that it can be layered, okay? Sometimes it has to dry before you can kind of add more. And let it dry a bit. So we have a circle of black and then a circle of brown. And in the middle, you might have added the brown wash, and that's fine. You don't have to do that, but I just found it easier. Okay. And so when that dries, so give it a few minutes to dry up a bit. It doesn't have to be super dry, as dry as the petals before, because it's okay if the watercolors flow in the middle, because that's just gonna make it look more realistic. But once it's dried into your paper a little bit, you will probably find it easier to go back in and add a little more of that dark brown in places where maybe it wasn't quite as dark as you wanted, okay? Don't worry too much about it being a perfect circle right now, because we're gonna go back in and fix that with the black later. It's just about laying down this color right now, just to show that there are different colors in the middle of the sunflower. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now I am noticing that my paint on the outside is drying a little bit funny, so I'm just gonna go back in with pure black and just kind of fix where the paint was getting a bit too light. There we go. Now, for our next step, we are going to go back in with black. So you can, if you need more black, you can grab more black because we want this to be really dark. And we are just going to do the rest of the circle that dotted black. So you are going to fill in a circle in the middle of your sunflower with black, okay? So take your time, draw out the circle. If your sunflower is too wet and your paints are kind of blending too much, you can let it dry a little longer, okay? But whenever it's dry enough to add your circle, you can go in with black. And we're dotting it, remember this, because we don't want it to be too perfect. We want that illusion of seeds, and the seeds are not going to make a perfect circle. They're going to stick out on edges, and they're gonna look a little bit irregular. So it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Okay. There we go. And you can go back in and add a few more seeds around the edge if you feel like your sunflower wasn't dark enough. If you think it is dark enough, don't do this. But if you feel like it could be a little darker on the outsides, you can go back in and just add a few more seeds here and there. There we go, I'm pretty happy with that. So if this circle in the middle isn't as dark as mine, and you want it to be pretty dark in the middle, you can go back in when it dries with a little more black and just layer that black to make it dark, okay? While that's drying, we're gonna do our stem because we're gonna add one more step to our petals, okay? And if you got paint splatters like I just did, just take some water and blend them out. And if they're really big, you could dot them with a piece of paper towel, but I feel like mine are okay. Looks good. Okay, so you can catch up and pause this video if you need more time to do the inner circle. If you're ready, you can come with me to do the stem. So for our stem, we are going to take this dark green. So it is 1, 2, 3 rows from the top, and it's the second one over. So we're gonna grab that dark green, and we're going to put it somewhere on our palette. And we're going to use the tippy tip, that little tip of our brush, so we're not pushing hard, we want that precision again. And we are going to color in our stem. So start with the outside and then fill it in. And if you get any on your petals like I just did, just take your water, clean brush with water, and pull it off with your brush. Or sorry, pull it off with the paper towel. So scrub it with your brush a little bit gently with some water, and then dab it with your paper towel, a clean part of the paper towel. Just dab it off. And then remember that's wet, so if you need to fix it, let it dry. Let it dry a bit before you fix it, okay? Just gotta be so precise with things. Like small areas, you have to use the precise little tip of your brush. And if you find that hard, don't worry. And if it does go over and you don't feel like you can fix it, no stress, because that's part of learning. It's hard even for me to get these things so precise sometimes. So once you're done your stem, and if your middle has dried, we're gonna go in with white. So this is our last step. So take the white, it's actually the top corner of your palette. We're gonna take lots of that white, so scrub, scrub, scrub. You might want clean water for this if your water's really, really dirty. So scrub, 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 scrub. And we're gonna mix that in with a little bit of that brown from before. So we're trying to make like a really, really light brown. Yeah. There we go. Maybe need to add a little water. And then we are just going to do around that black inner circle, we're gonna dab the white, or that very light brown that we made. And it does not have to be a perfect circle. We want to give the illusion that it's blending in to the other parts of the sunflower, okay? And if your inside of your flower is still wet, it might bloom a bit, but that's totally fine because it just gives it that illusion that it's real and it's realistic. And if you're unhappy and you think that you need it to be darker, once again, go in with more black and just darken up that center, any pieces that you want to be darkened, okay? There we go. That, my friends, is our sunflower. So the last step is to sign your work. So at Find Somewhere, I recommend a bottom corner, and you can sign your name. And if you don't know cursive, you don't have to do cursive. Just sign your name how you usually sign it. And then we're gonna put the date so you can remember when you did this painting. So today is September 4th. So we're gonna do day, month, year. So we're gonna put 4 for the day, /9 for the month, because it's September, which is the 9th month of the year, / and then the year, 2024. So 4/9/2024. And there you have your beautiful sunflower painting. I hope that you enjoyed following along to this, and I look forward to hopefully seeing some of your beautiful sunflower work. If you want to send them to me, I'd love to see them. And until next time, have a happy time painting and see you soon. Bye.